俺に勝てるのは俺だけだ。じゃあその俺が相手ならどうなるんすかね。
Copy, noun, a thing made to be similar or identical to another. Throughout fiction, there are many depictions of the copycat character, that being characters whose main shtick is that they can copy the abilities or traits of other characters. However, one of the best representations of this character type is Ryota Kise, the last to join the generation of miracles. The runt of the litter in a lot of respects, yet ends up being the one who would rise the highest in the series itself. Today we're going to talk about one of the best copy characters in fiction, that being Kise. Now, Kise coming into the series itself is presented as the weakest of the strongest via his own self-admission of being the weakest of the generation of miracles. Kise was also the first to lose to Kagami and Kuroko. This, in actuality, was the best thing to happen for his character, which we'll get into in a second. It introduced off his ability to take any play he sees and copy it in an instant. Going beyond a mere imitation, he turns it into his own play. This is being put on full display with him doing this with the move Kagami just showed him, but with Kise actually surpassing it, as Kagami notes he's smoother than me with power to match. It's a pretty straightforward ability, the limitation being that Kise does have to be somewhat comparable to the target's physical abilities, meaning it's not as if you would just be able to look at an NBA player and just replicate their physical moves or their techniques. This also works in reference to characters who are just, quote, stronger than Kise himself. However, this wall is something that Kise actually does shatter through, as we'll soon learn. It's pretty much any technique or ability that a player in a relative range to Kise who is more physically gifted than pretty much everybody he plays against, Kise is going to be able to copy in an instant and likely transcend, considering he's far more gifted than the average player. Rerouting this back to my initial point, Kise actually losing for the first time to Siren and harboring that feeling of loss during the very start of the series, this being something the other generation of Miracle members only really feel later on, was a blessing in disguise. Due to this, Kise was far more motivated than other members of his group to actually practice in order to pay Kagami and Kuroko back. Look at it like this, Kise is somebody who's noted to have just as much innate talent as Aomine, but is now far more motivated in practicing much harder to unearth his potential, leading to Kise making the most gains compared to any other generation of Miracle member during the show, at least before the extra game. And while Kise does make sentiments that the difference between him and the other four members is that they have a sense for the game that nobody can imitate, not even Kise, with Kagami growing to find his own sense, I believe this is closer to Kise still being in his fledgling stages of sorts, as he still was the last one to join the generation of miracles and has been playing basketball the least compared to the other members who have been playing it, well, for either a longer duration or their entire lives. Before I discuss Kise's evolution and how this is displayed, such as his match against Aomine, it is important to note, at least in reference to other sports, Kise does have the highest degree of athleticism, as his copy ability isn't limited to basketball. We actually see that with soccer, he's able to copy an ability he's just seen, which is impressive due to soccer innately requiring a higher technical demand of using feet instead of hands for precision, with the brain itself having a smaller connection to the feet compared to hands, making precise control with the feet unnatural and hard to master. Hence why a lot of soccer pros do start out at a very young age, as it's much harder to adopt that connection later on compared to using your hands. So in terms of overall athleticism, Kise is actually just ridiculous, and the whole reason he gets into basketball itself is due to actually seeing Aomine's movements, which he actually couldn't replicate, which was his motivation, which is very pivotal for Aomine versus Kise, as Kise has tons of admiration for Aomine. We're going to talk about this in 1 second. However, there is a big point in the game where Kise can't win against Aomine because he's got no weapon to call his own, and beating Aomine with ordinary skills he picked up from other players just isn't possible. The biggest thing holding Kise back from defeating someone like Aomine is his admiration. Kise's own words put it best. There's no denying it. He's really cool. He's got this totally unique style that can't be copied. I was so in awe of that I actually started basketball because of him. Usually I can copy any move right after seeing it, but no matter how hard I try, it just won't work on him. But I get it. I know the truth. I know why I can't do it. When you look up to somebody, you can't surpass them. The desire for victory weighing out over his admiration for Aomine. Kise notes he's just got to stop admiring him to copy his style. We get a bit more dialogue on Kise's copy technique and how he's really quick to comprehend moves and styles. If he went against NBA stars, it's not like he could mimic what they do because it would be beyond his physical capabilities. But looking at it another way, even if he's attempting this, he must believe he can do it, which is why the mental aspect was so huge to Kise copying abilities. We see that during the third quarter, Kise is adamant on copying Aomine's moves throughout the entirety of his play. The only one who could beat me is me. What if I am you? How about then?
ついにキセがエースの青峰を
Our shock noting our nightmare just came true. I can't believe it. Those moves now were just flawless. He copied Aomine. The results of Kise copying Aomine's style was all-out war in the fourth quarter. For about 9 minutes straight, both teams' aces kept trading buckets. The game coming to a close with Aomine reading that Kise was going to pass due to a stylistic difference. Aomine himself actually admitting that Kise could have won this game, with the ace getting injured following this game due to having to exert himself against Kise. This is nowhere near his limit, as we'll soon discover in the Winter Cup. During the Winter Cup, Kise would face a former starter for Teiko Middle School, that being Shogo Haizaki, an individual who some consider to be the miracle that never was. The two have a rocky history to say the least, with Haizaki also having a similar ability to Kise in being able to copy moves as he sees them. While both Kise and Haizaki can copy any move they see in an instant, the difference between them is that Haizaki alters the rhythm and tempo to his own style, even more so than the adjustments that Kise makes, basically making it so the move looks exactly the same on the surface, but the opponent he copied can't help but be thrown off by the different rhythm. It ruins their own rhythm subconsciously, rendering the move useless. To put it plainly, instead of copying moves, Haizaki steals moves. That's the difference between him and Kise. Kise's record to Haizaki is nothing short of terrible. On top of losing pretty badly to him in middle school, basketball moves weren't the only thing he was stealing, as there was a girl Kise was dating in middle school that Haizaki had stolen as well. Bro lost the game for the starter spot and his girl in the same match. Truly a devastating loss. Kise overall is essentially faced with a better version of himself, who's noted to have physical abilities on par with Kise, and in addition to his stealing move technique, he also might be holding back in this game as well. It is important to note that Kise actually was overworked during the events of this game, and went back into intense training without recovering properly, which was throwing his movements off, on top of the idea that not too many moves would have worked on Haizaki, and Kise was overall just running out of moves. Intent on ending this match and winning, Kise sets the record straight. That girl you stole off me just followed me because I was a model. She wasn't wifey. She was just one of many who swarmed around me, and you just stole one of many. You thought that meant something? With Kise proceeding to set the difference between him and Haizaki straight.
あれは奇跡の世代緑間慎太郎の高弾道3
Unveiling perfect copy, Kise shatters through the wall that was limiting him before. Sinking Midorima's high projectile 3, Kise is capable of using all of their moves. Because the Generation of Miracles moves take a big toll on their original users, there is a limit to how long he can use them, that being 5 minutes max. However, for those 5 minutes, Kise can use every one of the Generation of Miracles moves. This is what makes Kise such a good representation of the copy character, because there's a clear progression with his copying abilities and what sets him apart from somebody who can also do the same thing he can. But due to Kise's first loss in the series, he was able to continuously progress and break through that wall that Haizaki never could. Haizaki noting directly, their moves are the one thing I just can't steal. Now to be clear, Kise isn't actually adopting their stats when using the perfect copy. It's closer to him utilizing his athleticism to its absolute peak to recreate the group's moves. In the match against Aomine, Kise lowered his minimum speed to create the same gap in speed that Aomine used for a change of pace move. Similarly, he copied Midorima's high arching shot by storing power in his dominant arm, and to mirror Murasaki Bara's defense, he utilized his athleticism and anticipation on defense. Ryota Kise has incredible invincible basketball instincts. Ironically, the person who saw this first was Akashi Sejiro, the captain of the Generation of Miracles, who has a keen ability to identify or discern an individual's talent, an example being him discovering Kuroko's talent, Akashi ordering Haizaki to actually quit the basketball club because in the end he can't win against Kise. In the near future he will take your spot as a starter, then you'll be gone anyway, your lofty pride be damned. It's either now or later the same result either way. But this match did stand to prove that even as far as the copying ability, Kise does stand out on top, taking his biggest weakness, which was having no originality, and turning it into his biggest strength, leading up to Haizaki actually giving up on defeating Kise and intent on injuring his foot even further. Now, the most formidable thing about the perfect copy is how Kise then begins combining the Generation of Miracles moves, such as stopping Kuroko's phantom shot via using the Emperor Eye to read the shot angle in advance, while Murasaki's block let him intercept it, or crossing over with Akashi's Emperor Eye right into one of Aomine's high-speed drives. Siren's only hope is if Kagami enters the zone. His moves are just way too polished to call him a mere replica. That perfect copy is invincible. The term invincible in the context of Kuroko no Basket only really being thrown out for Akashi's Emperor Eye, which are predictions that are so accurate that they're just synonymous with future sight. It's also very important to note that Kise's overtraining injuries, which were worsened by Haizaki, made it so he actually didn't play for most of this game. And the team itself didn't really have a clear solution to breaking perfect copy. The main strategy they go with is observing Kise's tendencies, as all the moves used are ones they faced before, and if Siren is able to figure out which move Kise can copy next, Kagami might be able to stop him. Keep in mind this just doesn't work in the sense of a singular player stopping Kise, as the game ends with Kagami about to shoot a meteor jam that he knew he'd miss, instead passing to Kuroko, who makes the winning shot. It's extremely cathartic that the weakest member of the Generation of Miracles, at least by his own self-admission, ends up being one of the stronger members who just has no clear way to be defeated in sight. And I will say, I do have to give Fujimaki credit for writing Kise the way he does, because he does balance the perfect copy with a time limit, so it's not this groundbreaking ability that just breaks every game and allows Kise to auto-sweep everybody, but whenever it's active, Kise just is nigh unstoppable, on top of all the existing abilities that we've seen from him thus far. Most times in fiction, when a character has a copy ability, there usually is some finite limitation to the ability that makes it less usable overall, especially in reference to the higher stages of power for that respective verse. But what I really admire about Kise in particular is that he continues with the ability to copy the strongest players in the series itself, doubling down on the copycat aspect of himself while proceeding to combine the Generation of Miracles moves into his own play. Perfect Copy also being a great tool to keep Kise on the same level as the other Generation of Miracle members when they actually enter the zone, which is the higher stage of their performance. The zone, like I mentioned in other videos, is where athletes are able to play with 100% of their abilities. So, for example, in Aomine's case, he gets twice as fast, this bleeding into all aspects of every character's basketball style. Is being displayed in the extra game, where we have a direct comparison where Kise initiates his perfect copy to match Aomine's force zone activation, and perfect copy Kise being showcased to be on par with Aomine in the zone. Other players noting how it just looks like there's two Aomine on the court at the same time, this being more impressive due to Aomine being in the zone at this time. Nash Jr. even noting how Kise is matching Aomine's intensity. So narratively, it actually works as a tool to keep Kise in play or in contention with the higher stages of players, as Kise normally doesn't go into the zone, or he isn't known for entering the zone during games. However, we actually do see against Team Jabberwock that Kise is actually able to enter the zone while utilizing perfect copy. And although it really wouldn't last long due to the extreme stamina drain the zone offers, along with the stamina drain perfect copy also takes, Midorima notes it blatantly that Kise is the strongest player on the court, taking his peak copying ability and the peak state a basketball player can reach in the series itself, and Kise reaches the strongest threshold. This allowing Kise to dominate the entirety of Team Jabberwock until his stamina runs out. The very important thing to know is that Kise's copy ability always remains relevant and is executed so perfectly throughout the series itself, compared to a lot of other series where it just isn't as relevant compared to the main cast of abilities, or just does fall off due to some sort of limitations designed in the power system itself. This is why I think Kise is the best representation of the copycat archetype, I guess you could say. The limits for the ability are very well defined, and it coincides perfectly with Kise's character, especially when you consider how rapid his improvement is, yet he's the least experienced of the Generation of Miracles. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, enjoy Kuroko no Basket content. Check out any of my other videos in the playlist below. I know a lot of people are probably going to get into Kuroko no Basket matchups. I think that's entirely fine. I just do have dedicated videos on my channel, either ranking the Generation of Miracles or just talking about some individual matchups, which you can check out and argue over there. I will catch you next time. Bye-bye.